Hello, welcome to ATI 4640. This session will continue addressing supply chain, concentrating on the supply selection, the logistics systems, the ethical issues, and supply chain sustainability. Selecting the right supplier is a critical decision to make, especially if selecting a supplier to be a long-term partner in the supply chain. Supplier selection considers many factors, such as the strategic fit with the company, the response, the fulfillment, the supplier location, the delivery, and the supplier performance. In addition, procurement policies should be established to address vendor agreements and the rules of that agreement. The supplier selection is a four-step process. The first step or the first process is supplier evaluation, which will include finding potential suppliers, then determining the likelihood of them becoming a good supplier. Although there are certifications provided by international societies and agencies such as the ISO 9000 and the ISO 14000, some companies have their own certification process that the supplier has to go through. A certification process usually involves one, qualifications, two, the education, and three, the certification performance process. Once certified, the supplier may be awarded special treatment and priority, allowing the buying firm to reduce or eliminate incoming inspection of materials. The second step or stage will be supplier development, where the firm establish quality requirements and makes sure that the supplier understands the importance of those requirements. The supplier will be also informed about product specifications. The firm and the supplier will agree on schedules and delivery according to the developed procurement policies. In some cases, supplier development might include training, engineering, and production help, and information transfer procedures. The third stage or step will be negotiation. Although prices for end users are fixed, the prices for products between businesses are negotiated. Actually, negotiation is a significant element in pursuing or purchasing and considered a highly valued skill of purchasing manager. If you have those skills, you are a good purchasing manager. There are three negotiation strategies: the cost-based price model, the market-based price model, and the competitive bidding model. The cost-based price model requires that the supplier open their books to the purchaser. The contract price will be based on time and material or on fixed cost with an agreed on change to accommodate inflation. In the market-based price model, the price is based on a published auction or index price. It's already known, we know it, then that's it, this is the price. The third negotiation strategy is the competitive bidding, which is a strategy used when the suppliers are not willing to discuss cost. This strategy is adapted by many companies and does not foster long-term relationships or partnership between firms. You just put the bid out, and the winner will be the one with the lowest cost, or with other factors. It depends on the company and what they're looking for. Supply chain partners usually develop a contract to spell out terms of the relationship, including sharing risks, benefits, and creating incentives to encourage supply chain partners to adopt policies that are optimal for the entire chain. Companies with multiple facilities can increase efficiency and have a single voice or centralized purchasing, which can leverage economies of scale and uh, with large with a large volume and increase the power of negotiation. When you have more than one facility, you need to purchase a lot of items, then that will increase the volume and you can negotiate for that. With a centralized location, the company can develop specialized staff to deal with procurement, develop supplier relationships, and maintain professional control. Part of the centralized office will be dedicated to supplier selection and the negotiation process. Instead of having multiple people in multiple locations doing the same task, and you can reduce duplication and have specialized people each doing their assigned task. You don't have to have one person in each facility ordering the same part from same company or other companies. You can make it centralized and order the same item from the same company using the power of negotiation with the increased volume. So the same item will be shipped to all companies or to facilities from the centralized location, promoting standardization. Everyone is using the same parts, not every facility ordering from a different vendor. It's the same vendor for everybody, centralized and standardized. E-procurement means using the internet to facilitate purchasing. The electronic procurement speeds purchasing, reduces cost, integrates supply chains. The order and the payment will be processed electronically through a system that allows electronic data exchange under secured conditions. A notice will be sent by email to the buyer once the order being shipped. In addition to online catalogs, some suppliers and buyers have established online auctions or auction sites. Um, Online auctions is a great opportunity to dispose of excess raw material and discounted or excess inventory. Online auctions lower barriers to entry, encourages sellers to participate, and increases the potential number of buyers. On the other hand, a buyer can post online the description of a desired product or service for potential supplier to submit their bids, including price and delivery information. This is called a reverse auction, where suppliers will start bidding the price down to compete with each other and win the purchase posted by another buyer or by the buyer. Notice that with the traditional supplier selection, the price was not the only factor that was used to choose a supplier to buy from. Procurement activities will be associated with receiving, warehousing, inventory, and shipping activities. Those activities form what's called a logistics system. The main goal of the logistics system is to obtain efficient operations through the integration of all material acquisition, movement, and storage activities. Many companies will choose to outsource their logistics activities since a logistics specialist can bring expertise that is not available in-house, which will allow competitive advantage to be gained through a reduced cost and improved customer service. The types of distribution system used in logistics are trucking, railroads, air freights, waterways, and pipelines. Trucks moves the vast majority of manufactured goods relatively fast and consistent service. Trucks can pick up and deliver on time with minimum or no damage and with low cost. It receives greater revenue per ton shipped and technology. Satellite communication system has improved the efficiency of tracking and tracking shipments. Railroads have the ability to carry large loads but still controlled by the size of the containers. To solve this, railroad started using piggybacking or double decker, where two containers may be placed on top of each other for space utilization. Air freight is fast and flexible for light and perishable loads, but expensive. Waterways are typically used for bulky, low-value cargo, used when shipping cost is more important than the speed. Since it's very cheap compared to the air freight, it's very slow and can sometimes take months to arrive to destination. Uh, Freight rates are based on the size of the vessel, the cost of the fuel, and security requirements. Although some gas or oil being transported through trucks or through ships, there was a need for a way to transport fluids in large amounts and continuous basis. The solution was to use pipelines extended across land to transport fluids and gas. The advantages: low maintenance, and they are dependable. Even if there are any weather conditions, still they are running. The disadvantages: few locations, accommodate only a small number of products, just the oil and the gas, and relatively slow. Companies can also use a multimodal shipping system through combining shipping methods. You can combine the air with the ship, the ship with the truck, and so on. This is common with international shipping, using waterways to get the ports, then using trucks or railroads to move through land. That will be feasible if we can do it, especially when using standardized containers. During shipping, the product in transit is considered as a form of inventory and has carrying costs associated with it. As being said before, faster shipping will cost more than slower shipping. There are trade-offs in choosing which route to go. An evaluation can be done for the two costs to understand the trade-off. Warehousing or warehouses hold goods for moderate to long periods of time in an attempt to balance supply and demand for procedures and purchases. Warehouses can be used to assemble, process, or redistribute goods. Warehousing may provide other functions such as consolidation, break bulk, cross-docking, and postponement. Warehousing can be a channel for assembly. It's an implementation of postponement where you can postpone some of the items to get to the end user. Companies can ship components or modules where the distributor uses the warehouse to complete assembly and ship or deliver locally. That will provide an opportunity to provide variety of products for the end user and will reduce finished goods inventory for the manufacturer. The distributor and the manufacturer become partners at that point. The partnership will provide better response to market demand with less investment. As stated in a previous slide, many companies will choose to outsource to logistics specialists. A company who has the expertise, the technologies, the tools, and the techniques to track and manage shipments, reducing losses, and increasing efficiency, reducing inventory, and improving delivery reliability and speed. A company that can coordinate supplier inventory with delivery services. It will be a company that might be able to provide warehousing, assembly, testing, shipping, and customs. The management of the supply chain does not focus only on incoming material, but also on outgoing or distributed products. Distribution is a broad range of activities aimed at efficient and rapid movement of products of choice from the end of the production line to the consumer. It's a movement of goods and services. Increasing the number of distribution facilities generally improved response time and customer satisfaction. Total logistics costs are important, which includes inventory cost, transportation costs, and facility costs. The chart on the left represents the response time versus the number of facilities in the area, which indicates that an increase in the number of facilities generally implies a quicker response and increased customer satisfaction. With the logistics cost, the curve tend to follow the top shape, first declines, then rises. So the practical example given in the cost chart, total cost of logistics will be minimized using 3 facilities. However, when revenue is considered as explained in the next slide, you can see that when increase the number of facilities, actually the cost will increase. So with revenue, you can see that profit will be maximized using the 4 facilities, whether creating a network of warehouses or retail outlets. Finding the optimal number of facilities represents a critical and often dynamic decision. So we need to find that optimum number of facilities or warehouses that I need to use to maximize the profit and lower the cost. An effective distribution management system is very important in the supply chain and in the competitive advantage, not only through facilities, packaging, and logistics, but through selection and development of dealers and retailers to ensure ethical representation of the firm's products. Downstream management is an important as exactly the same as upstream management. When dealing with supply chain of firms, opportunities for unethical behavior and temptations are high. Ethics are critical to long-term success of organization. To define acceptable behavior, many companies have strict rules and codes of conduct. The Institute of Supply Chain Management has developed a detailed set of principles and standards for ethical behavior as indicated in this slide. It states what to promote and uphold and what to avoid. This slide and the next 3 slides show the ISM Ethical Standards. So you can look at the perceived impropriety. You can look at the conflicts of interest. You can look at issues of influence, the responsibilities to your employer, the supplier and customer relationships, the sustainability and social responsibility, the confidential and proprietary information, the reciprocity, the applicable laws, regulations, and trade agreements. And of course, the professional competence. To get the product all the way to the customer is part of the challenge of sustainability in supply chains. The return or reverse logistics in the supply chain is also another challenge that should be addressed. Reverse logistics involves sending returned products back up the supply chain for resale, for repair, for reuse, for remanufacturing, for recycling, or for disposal. Another concept that is being introduced in the supply chain is the closed loop supply chain, which is preparing for returns prior to product introduction and in the design stage. It's a proactive design of supply chain that tries to optimize all forward and reverse flows and utilize components that have value after return. This table shows the management challenges of reverse logistics. The challenge of damaged product packaging that has a distribution cost that is not visible, inventory management that's not consistent, speed that is not a priority, and with a product quality that is not uniform. We can use assets committed to inventory to measure supply chain performance. The number we get can be compared to the average percentage in such industry, and the lower the better. For example, let's assume that we have investment in inventory equal to 12.5 billion. The total cost is 42.9 billion. Then the percentage invested in inventory is equal to total inventory investment, which is 12.5 billion, divided by the total assets, which is 42.9 billion, all multiplied by 100, and that is equal to 29.1%. So we can use that as a measure for the performance of my supply chain. Are we doing good with the supply chain, or we are not? And again, to do that, we can compare that number, the 29.1%, with the standard or with some type of index that we have in the industry. This table lists the averages for certain industries and gives some examples for high performance supply chains such as Toyota, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. If you look at Home Depot as a retail store, this is just an example. It's not a real number, just an example. If the average should be 27% and the Home Depot has 29.1%, then they need to reduce their investment in inventory to compete in the market. Also, we can measure supply chain performance through inventory turnover, which can be calculated by dividing cost of goods sold by the average inventory investment. Inventory investment can be calculated through taking the average of several periods, or through dividing the beginning plus the end by 2, or just by taking ending inventory. It depends on the approach of the company to do that. But those are the different approaches for or to find or to calculate inventory investment. In this slide, we have an example. The table that we have shows the annual report for Pepsi-Cola Incorporated, which determined the turnover and weeks of inventory. The numbers shown are in billions of dollars. So you can see that the inventory turnover is equal to cost of goods sold divided by inventory investment, which is 28.7 divided by 2.73, and that is 10.5. So the inventory turnover is 10.5. This table lists some examples of annual inventory turnover in different industries, manufacturing and services. From the table, you can see that similar companies such as Coca-Cola has turnover inventory of 5, while Pepsi-Cola has 10.5. Although higher turnover is preferred, but does not always mean better performance. And we need to see why there is discrepancy or a huge difference between two companies that has the same industry. And again, this is just an example. Those are not real numbers. We just learning how to compare or how to judge a supplier by some performance measures. We can use other measures of performance to measure the supply chain, such as weeks of supply. To calculate weeks of inventory, we first find average weekly cost of goods sold by dividing inventory investment by the average weekly cost of goods sold. Average weekly cost of goods sold equal annual cost of goods sold divided by 52 weeks. So we have 28.7 divided by 52 weeks, that is 0.55 billion every week. In this case, it will be 1.73 divided by 0.55, which will equal to 4.96 per week. So the average weekly or the weeks of supply, the number of weeks for supply will equal to 4.96 weeks. Making sure that your supply chain is performing excellent is a competitive advantage in a very challenging economy. Another way to measure the supply chain efficiency and performance is to compare it with similar supply chains performing well. This process is called benchmarking. The table in this slide shows the benchmark for some processes or operations within the supply chain. For example, order fill rate. The order fill rate, the benchmark firms is 98%, and typical firms at 71%. The best known benchmarking system in the supply chain operation reference or is the supply chain operations reference model, SCOR model. This is what we use to benchmark our supply chain. It's developed by the Apex Supply Chain Council. The 6 parts are the plan, which is planning activities for the supply and demand; source, which includes purchasing activities; make, which includes product or production activities; deliver, which includes distribution activities; return, which includes all closed loop supply chain activities. So you can see that we plan first what do we need to do, and then we source, we find the supplier for the material or the components, we make the part, deliver the part to the customer, and if there is anything, then it needs to be returned back to the supplier or the manufacturer. And we enable we enable the process, the whole process, through a supporting system. So we have the enable all over these processes, and those are the support for value added activities beyond the supply chain that support or enable the plan, source, make, deliver, and return. Firm uses the SCOR model to identify, measure, recognize, and improve supply chain processes. The model defines processes, metrics, and best practices. The best practices describe the techniques used by benchmark firms that have scored very well on the metrics. The SCOR model combines these metrics with performance attributes as shown in the table. The table shows the techniques used to calculate the company's performance for each attribute. Benchmarking can be useful, but it's not always adequate for excellence in the supply chain. Audits based on continuing communication, understanding, trust, performance, and corporate strategy may be necessary. The relationship between the supply chain partners should foster a mutual belief that we are in this together, and that's very important to understand. So that will be all for this session. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a great day.